Jiangsu Airport. The plane is preparing to land. Someone straightens his tie. Sweat pours from him like a stream. Jiang Dingfa, the richest man in Jiangsu, stood in a bunch of other people. His face seemed stern. The entire airport was blocked today because of one person, whose arrival all these people were now waiting for, wondering how high-ranking he was, how much of a big shot he was, since they resorted to such measures because of him. Dinfa, who had heard all the men's conversations, suddenly could not restrain himself and shouted at them, calling them jerks. They do not know the obvious things. The one they are waiting for has won 100 battles, achieved great success in the army, and is the only 9-star god of war in the country. He is called the Dragon Marshal. One of the employees wondered if this god of war was really that strong, but Dinfa abruptly interrupted him, telling him to close his mouth if he didn't want to die. Meanwhile, the plane had already landed successfully. The employees saw the silhouette of the person they thought they had been waiting for all this time. It was interesting to find out what he was like and what he was like. Dinfa immediately pulled on a friendly smile and introduced himself to the guest, showing all his cordiality. The man who got off the plane adjusted his hat and told everyone who met him that they didn't need to wait here anymore. The salutators clearly did not expect this. They looked questioningly at the person in front of them, as if waiting for an explanation. He said that Mr. Dragon Marshal had already left. The god of war at the same time held a leaf in his hand and looked at it carefully. It was a note from his brother, who confessed that those who killed him were Lin Mao and Zhang Kai, and there was also a request for revenge in the letter. In the right corner was Jiang Zun's signature. Crumpling the sheet in his fist, the man grimaced in his face. He thought that he would definitely take revenge on his brother's abusers, take revenge on those who took his life. Suddenly, the Dragon Marshal was hailed, saying that Commander Lai from Jiangsu was waiting for him in the car. He understood everything and headed towards the transport. The man who was waiting for him was all beaming. He was glad to meet him, and at the sight of the Dragon Marshal immediately turned to him. The same, in turn, glared at the interlocutor, telling him not to call this name anymore, not to address him as Dragon Marshal. The culprit immediately began to bow and apologize for his negligence. The god of war had settled himself comfortably and was now sitting in front of Commander Lai, who immediately asked with a smile what he could do. The marshal immediately put 2 sheets on the table, saying that he needed to know where those 2 were. The photos showed a guy and a girl. Commander Lai reported that this evening, the young director of Dingfa Group, Zhang Kai, agreed with Lin Mao and the takeover of Zunzi Group. Famous people of Jiangsu were also invited to the Zunzi mansion for a banquet. After listening to what was said, the god of war grinned, already plotting something. He now intended to attend this banquet tonight. When he got out, men in uniform lined up in front of the car, saluting the god of war. Dinfa Hotel. Evening was coming. Suddenly the door to the room opened. The woman turned to Mr. Zhang, saying that she had something to tell him. He got angry, asking what she wanted to say to him at such an important moment. Her answer made it clear that it was about something very important. She should inform him about it personally. Kai got off the bed and, putting on a dressing gown, told him to quickly tell about the reason for the visit. It was about today's banquet. Drinking from a glass of wine, Zhang listened on. As he was informed, the Lord Dragon Marshal notified them that he would be personally present there. After these words, the guy choked on the contents of his glass. Mao immediately ran up to her beloved to make sure that he was in perfect order. Clearing his throat, he said that everything was fine. Grabbing his jacket, Kai headed for the exit, and when the girl asked where he was going, he replied that he was going to Zunzi Mansion right away in order to prepare for the meeting of the Dragon Marshal. The guy did not expect that this person would personally visit them. He believed that heaven itself had blessed the Zhang family. In the next scene, the car was already speeding down the road. Lin Mao was asking why Kai was so worried. Wasn't that man an ordinary soldier? Guy explained to her that Mr. Dragon Marshal is at the top of the world hierarchy, and the fact that he would attend their event is a great honor for them. Zhang was all smiles, already seeing the bright future of his family. Then the car braked sharply. The passengers were a little shaken. The guy started shouting at the driver because of what had happened, but she replied that she couldn't do anything about it because an old man jumped right on the road. An elderly man blocked the road with his whole body and did not let the car pass. Kai went outside. He was not happy that this damn old man was in front of his car. Was he really looking for death? The old man ran up to Zhang and said that he had killed his son, which would become known to everyone in Jiangsu. The culprit must pay for what he had done. The grieving father was only called crazy. In Kai's ear, Mao reported that Jiang Zun's foster father was standing in front of them. According to her, he was most likely trying to restore justice for his deceased son. Zhang endured for a long time, but eventually pushed the old man, telling him to get out of sight immediately. And what if this man knows the truth about the murder of his son? He is just an old man. Can he compete with the director of the Dinfa Group? Tears came to the gray-haired man's eyes. He could not answer anything to the offender and the murderer of his son. Entering the hotel with his companion, Kai told the guards to get rid of this garbage and keep it away from their celebration. The guards were not in a good mood because someone dared to make trouble for the young gentleman. They held batons in their hands and intended to teach the old man a lesson by beating him thoroughly. Still lying on the ground, the man said that he would get justice, even if he had to die. Two men swung their weapons and were about to hit the poor guy when someone's hand stopped them. It was the god of war. He did not allow his uncle to be hit and immediately apologized to him for being late. The old man immediately recognized the person who had just helped him. It was Suzy who told uncle to come back first and promised to settle Zhang Zun's case. The guard, who was being restrained by one guy, demanded to let him go, and the second intended to strike with a baton. However, very timely, Su fulfilled the request of one of them and deftly dodged the baton approaching in his direction. The men absurdly collided with each other and both fell to the ground. Zun's father looked at the back of the one who stood up for him a minute ago in bewilderment. Tears came from his eyes because his son's glorious brother had finally returned. It really was a reason for joy. The door opened. Everything was ready in the place where the banquet was held. A lot of people gathered around. Suzy walked past them and did not give the best impression of himself. It seemed to others that this unknown person was a beggar who came to eat and drink. His clothes were so shabby that they did not fit this place. The god of war did not pay attention to anyone. He stood silently at the table with treats, intending to have a snack. Zhang looked at all the guests. He was informed that someone was causing problems downstairs and also injured two guards at the entrance. Kai already knew about this and was not happy about this state of affairs. He didn't expect Jiangju's most famous trash to come back here at all. Mayo was afraid that this person was here to cause trouble for them. As she knew, he had gone north to join the army on their wedding day 3 years ago. Kai said that Suzy is just a pathetic soldier. Does the girl really think that he is a dragon marshal or something like that? The guy was coming down the stairs, intending to give the guest a warm welcome. Approaching an old acquaintance, Zhang called out his name in order to make sure that the person in front of him was the right one. He just turned around and said that it really was him. Kai asked if Z was aware that all the people of Jiangju and Rong City both hate him and envy him because he married the most beautiful girl in the city, but left her on the wedding day to join the army for 3 years. Suzy didn't say anything, but Kai continued. This time he approached the interlocutor almost closely and asked how he could allow such a beautiful woman to live as a widow for 3 years. It was so wasteful on his part. Suddenly, Su asked if Zhang was done with his chatter and looked at him in such a way that something inside Kai trembled. He wondered what was wrong with this guy's eyes and how he, the young director of the Dingfa group, a man valued by the Dragon Marshal, could be scared because of this brat. Zhang straightened his tie and noticed that from the face of the interlocutor, one can conclude that he wants to eat and kill. Had he come here because of Zhang Zun's case, it seemed like the only right option. The young director said that he might have helped Zun through all this if he had begged him for help. Suzy was angry. He was clenching his fist tightly, which made his hand tremble. Kai put his hand on his shoulder and declared that as soon as he took over the leadership of Zunzi Group and inherited Zhang Zun's fortune, he would make Zunzi prosperous. Suddenly, someone turned to the young gentleman, handing him a microphone so that he could make a speech. Zhang first of all thanked everyone who came to today's banquet. However, before the fun begins, he wanted to introduce someone to the public. It was about a great celebrity, Suzy from Jiangju. Those present immediately began to discuss him. Since this man is Su himself, there is nothing surprising in the fact that he is so decrepit. This is the same garbage that killed his grandfather. According to rumors, he left his wife alone and went north to serve in the army, and returned, probably because he could no longer cope with the situation there. Someone assumed that the man returned because of the situation with Jian Zun. Well, what's the use of his return alone? He still won't be able to do anything about it. Then Mayo appeared. She suddenly came up from the side and asked the ex-fiancé what he was doing here. But he was not going to explain anything to her. Did he owe her something? Did he have to report to her? The girl's calmness instantly evaporated. She began to poke at the guy with her finger and say that she would find out about his motives anyway. She assumed that Su wanted to take advantage of her brother's death to make a fuss. The girl said that she had often met people like him, those who blackmail others for money. Kai tried to calm his companion down, because today is the absorption of Zunzi, a great day for them, so they should not be angry. Zhang reached for his pocket, deciding that the guest needed money. He took out a wad of bills and tossed them up. The money fell to the floor, spinning in the air, but Su did not move, and Kai said that there were 30,000 yuan. This money, in his opinion, should be enough for a whole year. The young director approached the rival and whispered that he would allow him to take the money if he started shouting and calling himself a loser in front of everyone. Zhang began to scoff even more. He offered another 30,000 yuan for dancing. Lin Mayo and the other guests were laughing. Zhang Kai was very good at introductions. People said that losers are always losers. They told the guy to get down on his knees and beg for leniency. Laughter could be heard from all sides. It literally surrounded Su, but he did not react in any way, did not even get angry, which Mayo did not like at all. She intended to take this opportunity to have the bodyguards teach this man a lesson. Susie's voice suddenly rang out. He only asked if they had laughed enough. Kai seemed not to understand the question and looked questioningly at this loser. The war god's expression changed. Now he seemed gloomy and stern. He said it was his turn now. Susie loudly ordered everyone to stop laughing. He declared that it was time for him to talk too. The guy spoke seriously. His face was stern. However, his words caused only ridicule from others. No one took him seriously. People began to be indignant because they believed that he had no right to say so. This person is just garbage, and garbage should humbly accept the shame and not try to fight back. Immediately, the young director asked everyone to take a break for a minute, stretched out his hand, thereby asking everyone to be silent. At the same moment, the hall became quiet. The grins did not disappear from the faces of the guests. Kai decided to be generous and let the guy say what he wanted. Besides, he was very curious to hear what this man would say. Lin Mayo snuggled up to her beloved, smiled and praised him for having such a kind soul. After a couple of minutes, anger was reflected on the girl's face. She looked sternly at the unwanted guest and, calling him a brat, told him to speak faster if he had something to say. She did not want this person to waste someone else's time and her boyfriend's patience. The god of war, unlike his interlocutors, seemed calm. He thought about it. Unexpectedly for everyone, the guy snatched the microphone out of Kai's hands. He did not even have time to react to such a conning. After that, Susie sat down more comfortably and was now completely ready to begin his speech. He crossed his legs and raised the microphone to his lips. The guy didn't even have time to say a word. As anger poured out on him, Kai was outraged by where this nonentity had landed. His companion was also unhappy with what had happened. She could not believe that this man imagined himself to be someone. She believed that he had no right to sit in the place of the Dragon Marshal. The couple were beside themselves with rage. Barely smiling, the god of war looked at the guy and the girl and said that since this place was prepared for the Dragon Marshal, he sat down exactly where he was supposed to. What was said caused bewilderment and misunderstanding on people's faces. After a short pause, Sue said that he is the one who is called the Dragon Marshal. At first, Kai and his girlfriend looked at the young man in surprise, and after that, they and all the guests present in the hall burst out laughing. They couldn't believe what this crook had just said. How can he be a Grand Marshal? It sounds like a bad joke. The guests laughed more and more. They believed that an idiot was sitting in front of them, who did not know what he thought of himself after several years of service in the army. After 3 years spent in the north, he apparently considered himself a star. He must really be out of his mind if he claims to be a Dragon Marshal. How can he pretend to be someone he is not? A woman approached the young director and whispered in his ear that, probably, a real marshal would be upset to see this squalor in his own place. Zhang decided that this was indeed the case. Mayo, smiling, expressed a desire to deal with this brat on her own. She came closer to the god of war and, grabbing him by the sleeve, ordered him to get up from someone else's seat right away. The guy, in turn, frowned at the girl who was so unceremoniously pulling his clothes. The surprise for her was that she was immediately slapped in the face. Her cheek hurt. She touched the place of the blow with her hand and, almost crying, indignantly asked how Sue dared to hit her. The marshal calmly replied that this slap was revenge for his late brother. After that, he said that this was her punishment for collusion with Kai and slapped a second slap in the face. The next one was to teach a lesson. Another blow was dealt to her for insulting Zun's father, and the latter followed the forcible appropriation of the company by Zun Zi. Zhang didn't look like himself. His face was distorted by a grimace of anger. He clenched his teeth tightly and looked at what was happening. And behind him, the guests stood in perplexity. Lin was already lying on the floor by that time. Her face seemed to have no living space left. Her eyes were closed, and her face was swollen from the blows inflicted. Picking up a handkerchief, the Dragon Marshal began to wipe his hands. He said that for him, beating this type of people gets his hands very dirty. Finally, Kai dared to intervene. Rage was splashing out of him. The guy was unhappy that Sue had the audacity to hit his girlfriend. The young director believed that this man was clearly looking for death since he was doing this, and even in front of his eyes. Suddenly, Zhang seemed to remember that he had guards. He shouted in their direction, asking why the hell they just stand and stare when this happens. The guy told them to get this bastard out of here immediately. Right now, the men obeyed. They rushed towards their target with fists and shouts. Sue deftly dodged the guards approaching him. One by one they swooped down on him. Suddenly, the guy grabbed the chair he was sitting on earlier, and soon the guards were lying in a bunch on this chair, and the chair itself was in the hand of the god of war. He was holding this chair with people right over his head. Soon the guy threw the chair right into the wall. Kai stared in horror at the picture that opened before him. He cursed his opponent while clenching one hand into a fist. With the other hand, he took out a knife and intended to use it for its intended purpose. From the back he attacked the enemy, wishing him to burn in hell. However, the Dragon Marshal realized that Kai was up to no good. His gaze shifted to the guy who attacked him. With a deft movement, he snatched the knife from the hands of the one who had just wanted to stab him. Sue hit the director, who immediately fell to the floor. She stated that this is not how he uses the dagger at all. The god of war plunged the weapon of his enemy. Immediately there was a loud cry of pain. Blood poured out of the wound. Kai leaned his hand against the wound and continued to scream. Without a change in his face, the dragon marshal sternly said that he had only one goal here. In 5 days he intended to come to his brother's grave. And if Kai was not present there, kneeling at his tombstone, the consequences would be very deplorable. Zhang looked at the guy, grimacing in pain. The other guests were also impressed because of what happened at today's banquet. The mysterious guy hurried away from here after his words, because he had already done what he came for. He said what he wanted to say and set his condition. The people gathered in this place looked at his back and could not say a word. Suddenly, as if remembering something, the god of war stopped. He turned around and declared that he was a dragon, so that from now on he would be called the god of war. The guy hoped that everyone present would remember what had just been said to them. Kai was still lying on the floor with a dagger in his leg. No one even came up to him to help. The young director was very angry. His gaze was riveted on the receding silhouette. By all means he intended to avenge what had happened. Suzy, in his opinion, will definitely pay for this. It was night. The stars were shining in the sky. The moon was shining. The god of war was standing on the street near multi-story buildings. His gaze was turned to the sky. He told his brother not to worry, because those responsible for his death will definitely pay for what they did. After standing for a while, the guy went on. There were cars on the road. Someone started honking. A mustachioed man was looking out of the car window, as if noticing a familiar figure. The man who was traveling with this man asked what he was looking at. President Zhang replied that it was not so important, because he just saw someone familiar. The fat little man in response only smilingly said that he was surprised that they did not meet that gentleman when they arrived at the airport. Instead, they are going to attend a shopping party for President Zhang and meet him there. He also flattered his interlocutor by saying that the Zhang family is the only one in Jiangsu who can skillfully show off in front of the Almighty and earn in the commander's tent. A moustached man smiled, modestly saying that it was all because of the favor of the Lord Dragon Marshal. The cars suddenly stopped near their destination. The president asked everyone to behave as respectfully as possible when they meet with the Lord Marshal. He asked them not to do anything that might annoy him. Everyone understood perfectly. Entering the hall where the banquet should take place, the mustachioed man asked Kai if Master Longshuel was here. However, a not very pleasant picture opened before his eyes. 2 people were supporting Kai, whose leg was oozing blood. It was unclear what had happened here at all. Someone behind the president's back suggested that someone seemed to have messed up everything. Others wondered why Kai looked like he had been robbed. Also, people realized that Mr. Dragon Marshal didn't show up either. They wondered if it was a joke on them. Now it seemed strange that Mr. Dragon Marshal was going to come to such a modest party about the purchase. Zhang Dingfa actually put feathers in his own cap. Finally, President Zhang couldn't stand it and shouted loudly, wondering what exactly was going on here. He ran up to his son, grabbing his clothes, and asked what his injuries were. Didn't Kai say the Dragon Marshal was coming? The young director, it turned out, was a little scared. He asked his father to slow down and told him that Mr. Dragon Marshal did not come to the banquet, but Xiu Zi from the Xiu family came, and it was because of this kid that everything here became as it is. The president was thinking angrily about the kid who had caused such a commotion here. He is only a child, but has the audacity to be an enemy of their family. The man's fists were tightly clenched. Anger overwhelmed him. Now he believed that this insolent man was now definitely a corpse. Meanwhile, Sue was walking down the street. He seemed a little sad. There were a lot of people around him. They were laughing and smiling, only he seemed to be on the outskirts of this celebration of life. Soon he noticed a sign on one of the buildings. The guy looked at her and thought about how long ago it was. He remembered that it was a harsh winter, and in despair he was freezing and starving. All alone, the kid was sitting on the ground, pressed against the wall of the building, and hugged his knees with small hands, trembling all over, trying to somehow warm up. Just when he was about to die quietly, someone's hand handed him something edible. It was then that a man appeared who completely changed his life. The man's eyes were big and kind, and there was a smile on his face. Now, having indulged in memories, the god of war bought the same treat and began to eat. The taste was too different from what it was then. In childhood, now it was tasteless. Suddenly, the man called out to the marshal, calling him boss, and said that Liu Kang had sent a message that he had tracked down the man who had saved him then. Impatiently, Sue asked who this girl was. Immediately, the marshal was asked to look into the phone. The person in question was called Yun Tian. She is considered the first beauty in the city, and the most important thing is that she is the one the guy married 3 years ago. It seems that what I heard shocked the god of war. He looked at the photo and was perplexed. Is his wife really the girl with buns he dreamed of so much? That's a coincidence. The marshal's interlocutor confirmed that this is indeed true. Z suddenly started laughing. The employee did not understand his boss in such a reaction, but Sue started laughing even louder. Now he seemed happy. The news he learned about today pleased him pleasantly. At the same moment, tears appeared in his eyes, and a slight smile touched his lips. He left his new wife 3 years ago for a girl with buns, who occupied all his thoughts, who was in his heart. The guy had no idea that she was the one he was looking for. Now he was wondering what he was doing now. He was informed that she ran Lion, the leader of the Yun family, was celebrating his birthday today. As a stream of the Yun family, the girl attends a birthday party at the family's ancestral home. The marshal's smile did not leave his face. He told his employee to go ahead and prepare the best gift possible right now. He did as he was ordered. When leaving, Sue ordered them to change into night clothes, as they were going to celebrate the birthday of an elderly elder. Meanwhile, at the birthday party, the chairman of the Shengu group congratulated the elderly woman on her longevity and presented her with a pair of high-quality Hessian jade bracelets. The CEO of Yuhai Group congratulated the elderly lady on her health and wealth along with a couple of precious landscapes. The young director of the Sinfa Group congratulated the elderly lady on her good luck and presented her with a luxurious night pearl. The woman, whom everyone was congratulating now, sat and listened to the speech of the presenters, who reported on the gifts. The grandson of this lady addressed her and told her to look at how these high-ranking authorities convey their wishes to her. The Yun family, in his opinion, really stands proudly in Giant City. The woman agreed with the words of her grandson. Suddenly someone's voice rang out. The uninvited guest was forbidden to go inside, because it was impossible to get to the celebration without an invitation. However, the guard was only pushed away by health. Sue claimed that he came here to congratulate the elder on his birthday. In his hands was a large box with a gift. Those present began to wonder who it was who came to them and why he was dressed in a soldier's uniform. In their opinion, he doesn't even have a single sign on his shoulder. Does he pretend to be one of them? The guy who was standing next to the birthday girl and her grandson seems to have recognized the newcomer, thereby causing surprise to the mistress and her offspring. It was Tian Kai, an acquaintance of Sue. He was glad to see his brother-in-law, who finally quit and showed up. Smiling, Z said that he had indeed returned. There was the sound of a stick hitting the floor. The lady who was celebrating her birthday suddenly asked why this useless piece of garbage is here at such a time. The grandson assumed that this person was here to eat for free. People began to recognize the guy who appeared so unexpectedly. This is a useless son-in-law from the Yun family. I agree with the rumors. He ran away from his wedding 3 years ago. Who would have thought that he would return at such a time? He probably faced some difficulties and decided to give up everything and not try any further. This opinion has developed about him. The same grandson started a conversation with the guest. He said that Sue must have also brought some kind of gift, said that he had come here to take part in the celebration. He answered without hesitation that he had indeed brought a gift here, and showed the box that had been in his hands all this time. There was a smile on his face. He seemed to be pleased with himself. Soon the guy opened this box, saying that he hoped that the elder would always be happy. The elder herself and her grandson looked at the gift in bewilderment. They were shocked by the contents and began to ask what it was. Was it really a bowl? The guests began to talk among themselves, wondering why this person gave her this bowl. Besides, this object is also chipped. Such an outburst seemed indecent to them, and they did not think what he meant by giving it to his grandmother's birthday. Tian Kai stood behind his brother-in-law and seemed agitated. Someone said that Sue probably wants to eat out of this bowl whenever he comes back here. The elder's grandson asked his grandmother not to be angry, because it could harm her body and health. The young man immediately began to shout at the insolent man, asking what all this meant. Why does he come to Grandma's birthday and give her broken ones instead of a gift? As he spoke, he kept pointing his finger at Z. Sue closed the box and hurried to explain everything. According to him, this thing is not broken at all. Another guy asked what kind of joke it was. If this thing is not broken, does the guest want to say that his gift is an antique? It was another grandson of the elder. After exchanging a few phrases with the god of war, he turned to his grandmother, asking her not to worry about this garbage and saying that her grandson had brought her a wonderful gift. His gift was a scroll of some kind. He opened it in front of his grandmother, and she smiled. His gift was a painting painted by Master Zhenbao Jiao. It was called The Fragrance of Orchids and Bamboo. It took a lot of money to spend on it, and all just to please an elderly lady. The elder said that this painting may not be able to compete with the greatest work of the same master in his later age. However, it is still worth hundreds of thousands. The grandmother said how caring her grandson was, and he, smiling, replied that all this was done for her joy. The other grandson was not far behind. He also prepared a gift for the birthday girl. Clapping his hands, the young man signaled people to bring his gift. He prepared a vase from the Song dynasty and said he spent hundreds of thousands on it. Following the example of their grandchildren, others also began to present their gifts. Someone prepared jewelry for grandma. Someone also spent a lot of money by giving some jade thing. Someone gave a jade bracelet. She accepted gifts with a smile, noting how caring her grandchildren were. The guests felt that the grandchildren of the Yun family were undoubtedly giants among people. A lot of people agreed with this opinion. On the other hand, this useless son-in-law of the family simply shames them, which is why it is worth pitying this family. Suzy spoke again. He didn't want to spoil everyone's mood here, but he had something to say. All those donated items, according to him, were fakes. One of the grandchildren completely lost his temper. He began to shout at the son-in-law of the family, called him a piece of garbage, and asked what nonsense he was talking about. Others joined his indignation. They believed that he had no right to say that all the items here were fake. He himself, according to them, brought the broken bowl, and he himself must be just jealous that they brought gifts better than his gift. Sue wanted to say something, but a female voice told him to stop. The greatest beauty in the city appeared among the guests. It was Yun Tian. She asked if it wasn't enough for him that he was already shaming her well. Her face seemed gloomy and unfriendly. The guy immediately looked in her direction and came closer. Tears were streaming from the girl's eyes. He raised his hand to wipe them from her face and said that he had returned here today to make up for what she had lost and make her the happiest woman in the world. Tian didn't expect the guy to say something like that. A second of bewilderment passed, after which the beauty pulled away from the guy. She said that if he really had such intentions, then he would not have given her grandmother a broken bowl for her birthday. One grandson picked up on this idea, saying that this man even lies and cheats during his grandmother's birthday, as he can please Tian. Probably. Over these few years he has become stupid after becoming a soldier. The elder suddenly intervened. She told everyone to stop, because today should be a joyful day. And as for her son-in-law, whom she also called trash, she had something to say. She told him to take his developed bowl as soon as possible and get out of here so as not to embarrass their family in front of everyone. Tianyi stood beside him with her head down. The girl seemed to be very upset. After listening to everything that was said, the guy left his gift among other gifts. He still hoped that Shiran would treat him with great respect. The grandson who was standing next to his grandmother said that it was just a cracked bowl, so what could it matter? Z stood opposite Tianyi. He approached her, asking only to trust him, after which he decided to leave this place where no one was happy for him. The girl looked after him. It seemed to her that he was completely different compared to what he was before. Suzy was standing near the gate. When he got into the car, the employee said that he had offered such an expensive gift, but the Yun family didn't seem to appreciate it. The boss was not upset because of this. He decided that these people were limited in outlook. The driver reported that he had been informed from the city of Rong that the governor of the Southwest wanted to arrange a welcome banquet for the Dragon Marshal. The marshal told the guy to go to this banquet instead of him. He had no choice, so he agreed, and then asked where they would go next. The boss told me to go home, and then he quickly added that they were going home to his wife. His face was beaming with a smile. Meanwhile, one of the elder's grandchildren was talking to Tianyi. He was telling her to look at her good husband paying homage to the Yun family right after returning. The broken plate that the son-in-law gave was still being discussed by the grandchildren, and they were also still outraged that he accused them of their gifts being fakes. According to them, the redneck will always remain a redneck. Tianyi stood with her head down. She was sad. Suddenly, a voice rang out from somewhere. A man reported that it seems that the Yun family got a bad treasure. It was Mr. Kang. The old man wanted to look at the thing. He was the best antique appraiser in Rongcheng. Rumor has it that he can determine the authenticity of an antique just by looking at it. It is also known as the Fiery Gaze. This is a very respectful nickname for such an outstanding person in the antique world of the city. The elder greeted Mr. Kang with a smile and asked why he had not warned her in advance so that she could greet him properly in person. The one, in turn, that she is very generous. Soon the old woman said that the younger ones had given her several gifts and asked her to check them. For the guest, checking these gifts was a great honor. Both were heading to the place where all those gifts were kept, brought and presented in honor of the holiday. The grandchildren looked at each other with concern, as if they had something to worry about. One of them closed the gifts with himself and said that no verification was required. He added that these are all small things that are not worth checking. Mr. Kang. The guys nearby were talking about what this man calls hundreds of millions of small change. The Yun family, according to him, is really rich. The grandson, hearing these discussions, was visibly worried. Shiran told Tian Lang not to make a fuss and get out of the way as soon as possible. He could not contradict his grandmother and obediently retreated. The elder was interested to hear Mr. Kang's opinion about the painting, which was presented to her by her grandson. The old man examined the object and was silent for the time being. Then he exhaled heavily, resolutely saying that this painting is a fake that costs a little more than 1,000 yuan. This shocked the old woman. She clearly did not expect such a turn of events. The fake that had just been in the hands of an antique appraiser flew to the side. He threw it right on the ground. There was no point in treasuring such a thing. The appraiser began a further inspection of things. It was soon discovered that the Song Dynasty tubular furnaces and jade bracelets were also fakes. There was a general discussion because the grandchildren claimed that these gifts were worth several million. They even deceived their own grandmother. What a shame it was for the family. The elder said that this double craft had clouded her vision. The grandchildren began to reassure the grandmother. They said that they were to blame for everything, but all this was only for the reason that they did not check the treasures properly. They trusted the owners of the antique market too much, so they were tricked into buying fakes. The grandmother believed these children. She said that the younger grandchildren are blind as bats. The fact that Mr. Kang happened to see all this was too embarrassing for her. The appraiser said there was nothing wrong with that. Tianyi stood aside and listened to the conversation of the elders. She was silent. Her face was sad, but at some point she remembered Susie's words. He asked her to trust him. When Mr. Kang was about to leave, he was called out and asked to stop. He turned around. The main beauty of the city said that there is another gift that they have to check at this moment. In her hands was the same box with which she had previously come to take the family. Everyone else thought it was funny, because they realized that it was that guy's broken bowl. People hoped that the Yun family would not treat him like a child. Someone also said that all this was caused by previous events. One of the grandchildren asked Tianyi what good garbage could offer. The young man asked her not to upset Mr. Kang even more. The girl only guiltily averted her eyes to the side. The elder was looking at Lord Kang. He suddenly began to behave a little strangely. The appraiser was staring at the item in the box, and the young man said that their family member was cheating with this split bowl. So Mr. Kang should not worry about such trifles. However, the Lord asked again when this item was called a split bowl. For him, what this person said was that this burnt little bowl with purple spots that was used exclusively by the imperial family was a split bowl. The appraiser concluded that the Yu family was indeed a big family with big affairs. The grandchildren could not believe what they heard. One wondered what a burnt little bowl with purple spots was. Is the gift of garbage really a real antique? The old man said that last year Caltex auctioned a similar small bowl for more than 100 million. Everyone present was stunned by the announced price. The young man asked Mr. Kang if he had considered this thing correctly, because it seemed very doubtful that the garbage had a good thing. The old man regarded the boy's words as uncertainty and doubt about the appraiser's abilities. However, the elder's grandson immediately said that he did not dare to doubt such a person. Kang also stated that the person who can get this bowl obviously belongs to the elite. He wondered who had given them this thing. The elderly lady looked at the interlocutor in shock and seemed unable to pronounce a word. And then she gathered her thoughts and said that it was her granddaughter, but he had already left. There was a smile on her face. She seemed friendly. The Lord regretted that he had missed the chance to see such an expert. He hoped that Madame would treasure this little bowl. The grandchildren still couldn't accept the fact that such trash had obtained such a treasure. He must have been lucky. It couldn't have been any other way. Tianyi heard about everything that was said. She stood lost. There was hope in her eyes. She realized that the guy had not lied to her. A faint smile suddenly appeared on her lips. The car was speeding down the road. The topic of divorce was discussed inside. Someone strongly recommended filing for divorce as soon as they return. It was Lan Fei, Tianyi's mother. She was talking about Suzy. Allegedly, he avoided marriage for 3 years and suddenly appears out of nowhere to give something so magnificent. Now the woman was damn angry at this turn of events. The man who was driving said that everything was fine and tried to calm his wife down. Tian was sitting in the back seat of the car. Ryo Chen said that at least now their take seems more mature than before. The woman screamed again because she didn't see any point in it. The thing that their father gave to his grandmother was worth millions. It seemed to her that it would be much more beautiful if it belonged to them and they could sell it whenever they wanted. The husband wanted to say something, but they didn't let him utter a word. Chai Lan looked at her daughter and said that she didn't care, because she wanted her to divorce this useless piece of garbage as soon as she returned. The girl did not answer anything. She only timidly averted her eyes to the side. It was unknown what her thoughts were busy with now. Soon, the car arrived at the 7 Yun mansion. The mother kept insisting on a divorce. She said that as soon as they found Suzy, they would definitely have to discuss the topic of divorce with him. Ryo Chen offered to talk about it in more detail when they go inside. At the same time, all three approached the door. The woman felt something. It was some kind of smell coming from inside the house. Her husband also felt it. They opened the door. What they saw surprised the woman. Dinner was waiting for them on the table. All three did not understand what was going on here and where it came from. Chai Lan decided that they were being robbed and shared this thought with her husband, who asked in what world a robber would cook food at their home during a robbery. Tianyi had one suggestion, but she believed that this simply could not be. Suddenly a man's voice rang out. The man who was waiting for them at home was glad to see all three of them, as if he was waiting for their return. The guy in the apron from the pot in his hand said that they came just in time, and offered them to try this duck soup with pickled carrots, which he himself had prepared for them. Chai Lan was not happy with such a guest. She began to shout and ask how he got into their house, how he found out the password to their mansion. The guy wasn't worried at all. He just remembered with a smile that he had lived here before. The father of the family hugged his wife and told her to calm down, offering to talk after eating, but she still looked at the uninvited guest with displeasure. The woman also sat at the table with such a stern face, but his expression changed when the aroma of the dishes reached her nose. Chai Lan awkwardly said that the guy should not even think that she would forgive him just for the food he cooked. All three of them tasted Susie's dishes at once. This food seemed very tasty to them. Even the mother no longer seemed so serious. She decided that their wayward son was responsible for cooking while he served 3 years in the army. He replied with a smile that he did a little of everything when he was there. After that, the guy turned to his father, informing him that he had brought liquor so that he could try it. Ruo Chen was glad, he agreed, and when it came to tasting, he said that the flavor of the liquor was truly extraordinary. After that, the man asked how the guy managed to get a bottle of such an amazing liquor and got the answer Su got this bottle while he was in the army. The god of war himself thought that one should not tell the truth. In fact, this liquor was found while he was digging in an ancient tomb. Z carefully offered to try duck soup. He quickly found a common language with his father. The girl noticed that this man is really different from what he was before. While she was digging in her thoughts, she was suddenly called out. She turned towards her mother, and she said that she needed to go to the Mugarit's restaurant tomorrow morning because her daughter should go with her. The beauty asked why her mother needed to go there. Yes, she replied that there were several important issues that needed to be dealt with, but they had to deal with it together. Soon the woman was already full. She told her daughter that she probably should go to bed early, right after she finished eating. Chen Yi agreed. Chai Lan got up from the table. Then she turned to Su, who listened to her attentively. The woman said that if he still regrets what he has done in the last 3 years, then he should bring her that little bowl. The guy wanted to say something, but there was no answer. He was surprised that his mother-in-law was really still worried about this thing. The husband took the woman aside, saying that everything was fine, that this thing had already been donated and their son-in-law no longer had it. The wife said that the only thing her husband knows how to do is to give preference to this old woman. Now there are 2 people left at the table. Susie turned to Tan, telling her to rest a little when she had finished. He himself promised to clean up everything. The girl said that he should stop wasting his efforts here. She got up from the table, and the guy was looking at her. Tan said that this marriage, arranged by her grandfather, will end in a month. She knew that her husband had nowhere to go since he left the army, so she was willing to let him stay here for the whole month. When the girl left, she said that they would divorce at the end of the month, no matter what this man did. It seemed that the dragon marshal was upset by these words, and then a smile appeared on his face. He decided that it looked like he needed to work harder to get this girl to fall in love with him before the end of this month. He came close to his beloved, thereby embarrassing her, but she quickly pushed him away. Leaving, Tanny said that what needed to be said had already been said. During this period of time, the guy really, in her opinion, should start looking for a job. Looking at her back, the god of war thought. It seemed to him that she hadn't changed much since the last time. She just looked a little more awkward now. These thoughts brought a smile to his face. There was a knock on the door. It was T-Lan at her daughter's door and asked her to wake up. She was already literally screaming. Soon the girl opened the door. She seemed sleepy and said that she was finally able to take a break for today. Now she was interested in why her name was called so early. The mother asked if Chanyi knew what time it was. She told her to quickly put herself in order to go with her to the restaurant that was discussed at last night's dinner. The girl asked why they go there at all, because there is very expensive food. Chai Lan asked if she really should say this. Of course, the daughter's date will be held in this place. She was shocked by the news about the date, which she had heard about for the first time. Tianyi stated that she was already married, so why should she look for someone else? Her mother asked her what this worthless kid could do. The person she was going to bring her daughter to is Zhu Dior from the Zhu family. He is a young and rich guy who has just returned from abroad. In addition, his family's fortune is $1 billion. He is 100 times better than this beggar, due to the fact that their daughter married such a poor man. Her father no longer has any position in his own family. His position was not so good before. If they cannot find normal support now, then uncle will definitely deprive their family of everything. The daughter tried to object, but the mother did not accept any objections. She ordered to change quickly. Disobedience would have made her angry. Tianyi sighed heavily. She was not happy with this development of events. But she still did as her mother told her to do her hair, changed her clothes, and then asked her mother how she looked. The woman said that her daughter was beautiful. Now she was going to wait for the girl in the car and told her to hurry up. She did not protest. She sadly wondered when she would decide everything for herself. Will this moment ever come? Friend, a voice rang out behind the girl. The guy noticed that she was early today. She turned around and called the man by name, and he, holding porridge in his hands, said that he had cooked her something to eat and asked her to try it. Tianyi warned that Sue didn't have to do this for her at all. They would go their separate ways in a month anyway. However, Z is persistent. He has already told her that he will do everything to get her recognition and make her the happiest on the planet. He certainly wasn't going to throw words to the wind. He approached his beloved again and made her blush a little from embarrassment. The girl snatched the porridge from his hands and said that since she was hungry now, she didn't want to listen to any nonsense. Tianyi left the dish on the table. After she tasted the porridge, it seemed to her that it was very tasty. The husband who watched the girl eat said that what he cooked wasn't so bad. His interlocutor agreed with these words. The guy's cooking was really amazing. However, she did not want a domestic husband. She wanted someone who could make a name for himself, so she advised him not to waste time. Suzy told his beloved not to worry. He gently wiped around her lips with a handkerchief and said that he would do everything to be the one who could satisfy her. The beauty's eyes seemed to be shining. She said the man's name softly. After a moment of silence, Tian only told him not to touch her, pushing his hand away. Already getting up from the table, the girl announced that they were going to leave. At some point she stopped, thought, turned around and asked if the god of war had plans for today. He answered in the negative. He had no plans. This was good news, as he was immediately invited to go to Mugaritz with her. I didn't have to repeat it twice. The guy immediately agreed with joy. He called her ma'am, which she really didn't like, so she asked not to call her that anymore. Two people came out of the mansion. A car was parked nearby. The mother began to ask why her daughter took so long to get ready, because Dior had already started asking them to hurry up. Only after Tilan noticed her son-in-law, who also went outside, asked if he was also going with them. Tianyi said that she had asked him to go with them. The woman asked if she really wanted this man to go on her date. Did she really want to create problems for herself? Suzy didn't know this moment that they were going on a date. The beauty also said that the whole city already knows about their engagement anyway. If Dior doesn't even know that, then she's not going to marry him. It seemed to the Dragon Marshal that this was very well said. The mother has now stopped objecting. Well, let this son-in-law go along with them. She decided to hope that someone would not want to hide from shame when they met. The sun was shining brightly. Three arrived at their destination. The car stopped. All three of them got out and went straight to the restaurant. Chailan said that it would be good if Tian tried not to portray that ugly expression on her face. The daughter replied that she knew everything perfectly well. The man with whom the date was scheduled was already waiting for their arrival when the ladies entered. He was glad. Immediately, he introduced himself as Zhu Dior. Acquaintance with Missy could not but please him. Chailan Fei thanked Dior for waiting for them. He said that you don't have to worry, because he himself came quite recently. After that, Zhu turned to Z, mistaking him for Tianyi's younger brother, and said that he was glad to meet him as well. Sue hurried to correct the man, saying that he was not a brother at all, since he was her husband. Dior was surprised. He asked again about what he had heard. The mother hastened to explain her daughter married this man by the will of her grandfather. In a month they are going to dissolve the marriage. Zhu listened and understood everything. The woman, stepping aside with this man, asked him to humiliate her son-in-law so that he would understand the difference between them. Dior perfectly understood what was being discussed. There was no need to explain it to him twice. Meanwhile, Sue was digging into his phone. He asked his assistant to find out everything about the man named Zhu Dior. The man has already started his mission to humiliate this guy. He immediately said that it was probably the first time he was in such an elite restaurant. He also said that he should take this chance to stop playing on his phone. Dior sort of decided to talk to Sue. He said he had heard a lot about him. 3 years ago, according to rumors, the guy joined the army, leaving his wife. Now he wondered if he had become a commander or a battalion commander. Tianyi felt uncomfortable during this conversation. Z seemed calm. He said that he retired a year ago. His interlocutor asked if this meant that the guy was just a simple conscript. From what he knew, Sue had recently returned to Wrong City. He could assume that he had not yet found a permanent job. He had neither a diploma nor any skills. He does not plan to live at the expense of the Yun family. Tianyi finally couldn't stand it and ordered to stop this conversation. It was obvious from her that something upset her. But after that, she only said that they should already place an order. Dior said that he would show the difference between them. Now all four of them were sitting at the table. The man called the servants. A waitress appeared and immediately asked what she could do for them. Chailan asked what this young waitress said. Tianyi didn't know either. Zhu explained to them that since VIP seats in this restaurant are usually reserved by Spanish guests, the employees greet everyone in Spanish. The mother reported that none of them knew Spanish, and asked what they should do. Dior said that he often accompanies his father to Spain on business, so he knows this language well. The man was ready to order caviar paired with the chef's signature dessert and 1 steak with 2 bottles of Ho wine. The order was accepted. For the 2 ladies, he ordered 2 steaks and a salad, and for the gentleman sitting next to him, Dior did not order anything, saying that he could order himself. With that, Zhu handed the menu to the guy. He was going to watch this hillbilly embarrass herself. The man asked why he didn't order anything. Doesn't he like the food here? Lan Fei scoffed, commenting that he just didn't understand the menu. However, to everyone's surprise, Su spoke Spanish and was able to order himself a dish he wished for: broccoli with foie gras. The waitress was surprised. He also asked for salmon sashimi, and at the same time caviar and mushroom soup with them. The girl who took the order praised the Spanish tea, because it was the same as the native speakers. Dior was, to put it mildly, in shock. He wondered how a redneck like him could speak Spanish. However, Su did not consider it anything special. He said that this language is not difficult at all. He managed to learn it in just a month. These words were accompanied by a broad smile. There was no limit to the surprise of those present. The waitress started asking how he could learn Spanish in just a month. This is some kind of extraordinary talent. It turned out that this service could speak Chinese. And now it turned out. The girl explained that the gentleman started talking to her in Spanish, which is why she didn't speak Chinese. Su said with a smile that he understands everything, and also added that it is better to speak Chinese in this country. He said that it must be difficult to talk to a person who has only basic knowledge. It was a stone in the garden of Dior, because the man angrily asked what the guy had just said. Lan Fei calmed the man down and advised him not to pay attention to it. Even if this guy knows another language, he's still no good. The woman asked if he wanted to say anything to her daughter. Zhu got up from his seat and began to straighten his tie. He knelt in front of her and said that from the day he met her, he loved her very much. For the past 2 years, the hope of getting her had not left him. The girl just sighed. A message came to the phone of the god of war from Po Jun, whom he asked to find out more about Dior. The guy looked into the phone. Something there seemed quite interesting to him, because he grinned quite. Tianyi felt awkward. She said that the man hadn't even had time to drink yet, so why was he already talking some nonsense? Dior replied that this was not nonsense. In recent years, he has developed a heart disease from missing her too much. She's the only one in his life. This conversation was interrupted by Tsi. He said the president was absolutely right. He does have a disease, but it is not a heart disease. It is a disease that should not be disclosed publicly. The man seemed scared because of what he said. He stared at the guy who suddenly for some reason started talking about his illness. The man began to pretend that he did not understand what his interlocutor was talking about. Su, in turn, did not hesitate to ask again if he really did not understand anything at all. He began to say that Mr. Dior is constantly tormented by pain in the lower back and knees. And in addition to this, his hands and feet are freezing. The president, stammering, still refused. The dragon marshal continued to mock. He said that the master did not need to lie, and asked if he often wakes up in sweat or urinates in the middle of the night. The man was completely confused and could not say anything. Finally, he shouted his excuse that he was just too busy with work and study, which leads to health problems. He asked what kind of work he was talking about. Whether the man is really busy with work. Is it learning a language or some kind of service on the spot? Dior was shocked. The god of war offered the man to look at how he saw 2 girls yesterday. But it took him only 5 seconds to finish his job, which was very impressive. Z was looking at the phone while saying these words. The guy concluded that the interlocutor suffers not only from impotence, but also from premature ejaculation. He carefully advised me to take care of my body. The president could not stand it at all. He ordered to stop this farce, saying that this guy had abandoned Tian 3 years ago. He did it. It only shows that he did not treat her with any sincerity. So what's the point of bothering her now? Now the marshal's own expression has also changed. Getting up from his seat, he admitted that he left 3 years ago just to find a place for her. The girl who was sitting next to her and heard the whole conversation was now looking at her husband. He said that he loved her more than anyone in the world. Then Tian couldn't stand it. She said that was enough. They both looked at her. The girl told me not to argue anymore. Instead, I should have gone to lunch right away. The obedient husband agreed. He said that everything would be as his wife would tell him. Soon the dish was on their table. Lan Fei sat and thought about how to use this knife and fork. This was her biggest problem right now. All of Dior's thoughts were occupied with how this garbage could find out so much about him. Was he really checking his past? The president felt that he simply had to make this man look like a fool. Live music was playing in the hall. Zhu squinted towards a musical instrument. It seems he had an idea. He turned to Mr. Su, noting that he liked the music that was playing here. He said that the music here is really quite good. Dior asked if his interlocutor knew the name and author of this song. The man turned out to be so smug, as if he had just accomplished a feat. He was sure that the guy would fail on this question. However, Z immediately gave an answer to this piece of music written by Lizzie, called The Dream of Love. Su kind of laughed at the fact that the man does not know the answer to this question. The president was thinking that this simpleton could really say everything right. Mr. Dior, according to Tsi, got so carried away with music that now he himself wants to give them a little guessing, too. The girl asked what the guy was going to do. He replied that it was just a couple of exercises. He approached a musical instrument and asked the musician to let him perform the piece himself. The musician did not object. Taking a seat, the god of war began to touch the keys. He was going to play the piano, and Dior decided that he was just drunk or something like that. However, the guy could really play this instrument. Music started playing, and it was wonderful music. All the guests noted how good the melody is. They thought it sounded amazing. And Tian was thinking about what her husband had to go through over the past 3 years, since he had changed so much. Suddenly the music stopped. Enthusiastic applause rang out in the hall. When the guy returned to the table, the girl noted that he even knows how to play the piano. He modestly replied that this is what he once learned. Lan Fei thought it was just some strange trick and there was nothing much to brag about. Sue remarked that since Mr. Dior is fond of music, he probably should know the name of the piece that has just been performed. The man was silent. He could not think of what to say. He replied that it was a rhapsody on the theme of Paganini, Opus 43, written by Rachmaninoff and Off. He assumed that the answer was this. Then he replied that it was the Piano Concerto No. 21 in C major, K467, written by Mozart. C replied that he composed this small fragment on the spot, and the gentleman even misunderstood him. He deserves a fair assessment. The president swore to himself, and then offered his rival a drink together under the pretext that it was too boring to drink alone. The guy asked if the man really wants to humiliate himself again. Ju asked him to just say whether he would drink or not. The guy didn't mind, but the girls obviously didn't like the idea. She seemed agitated. Dior told the waiter to bring them 10 more bottles of cognac. Soon the bottles were already on their table. Sue emptied one glass. Other bottles were waiting for them on the table, which were being emptied. Men competed in the absorption of booze. Tianyi looked at both of them and asked them to stop drinking. Sue, who still didn't seem drunk, told Mr. Dior not to drink too hard if he couldn't do it anymore. He was already completely drunk. He spoke, stammered, claimed that he could still drink. However, his stomach said the opposite. The president suddenly felt sick. He covered his mouth with his hands so as not to get sick all around. But still it was not so easy to restrain the vomiting impulse. So very soon he threw up. It wasn't the most pleasant sight. The president's body shuddered. A tear flowed down his cheek. He soon began to cry and ask why he was so helpless. Lan Fei said that Dior had drunk too much and started talking some nonsense while he was crying bitterly. The woman wanted to help him somehow, but he only drove her away from him with tears in his eyes. He confessed to abusing, and this leads him to impotence. Even the most famous doctor, according to him, will not be able to help him in any way, will not be able to cure him. Yesterday, a man met with 2 foreign beauties, and his business was destroyed in just 5 seconds. Previously, it could persist for half a minute. The woman was a little shocked by such revelations. People passing by also squinted at the sobbing man. Those present wondered what had happened to this young man. He was considered brave enough to hide such things. Sue also said that this is the legendary situation when a drunk person tells the whole truth. Tianyi offered to forget about it in return. Her husband agreed without hesitation, and her mother only called out, pulling her hand in her direction. Mr. Dior was already almost undressed. He shouted that he had to cure his impotence. He said that he wanted to be happy. Even Lan Fei looked at him as if he was distraught. She sighed heavily and followed her daughter, asked her to wait for her. The daughter was dissatisfied because her mother found her such a person. Whether this is really what the woman wanted so much, the same replied that she did not even know that he would embody this virtue. The girl was holding a purse in one hand. Then suddenly the phone rang. It was her father, Tian, and he had what happened. And he said that Sister Kaikai had returned to Wrong City, so the girl should not forget to bring some gifts for the evening banquet, which will be held at her uncle's house. Tian understood everything, but it was unclear to her where she would be able to find a suitable gift by then. Z stated that she could leave the choice of gift to him. The girl asked if it was really possible to rely on him in choosing a gift. The guy said that the sister in question was friendly with him. When he returns by that time, he will have a gift ready for her. She informed them that they could come to this banquet by themselves, without her, because she no longer wanted to see the faces of the uncle's family. The daughter did not comment on this. She understood everything perfectly. Finally, the car moved off and sped down the road. City Hotel Yun. Tianyi said that Grandma and the others would all be there today, so she asked her husband not to talk nonsense. He replied that this would not happen until they provoked him. Someone's voice rang out from the side. The person to whom this voice belonged casually uttered the name Tian, which did not fly past her ears. It was one of my grandmother's grandchildren. He noticed that the girl didn't have a gift with her, and seeing Kaikai empty-handed would be a little hypocritical. Wasn't that how the girl replied that she didn't need this young man to doubt her sincerity? And he, in turn, replied that he was still her relative. It was not very good to talk to him like that. Also, the boy reported that he managed to hear. It was the guy Kaikai who was chosen by the chief himself. If they come without a gift, then they may harbor a grudge. Soon the young man turned in the other direction, calling out to Kaikai. sister and her boyfriend, Yao Hui, in the company of an elderly lady. The young man came up to greet his brother-in-law, asking why he came out in person. The man replied that it was his pleasure. Kai was now standing next to Tianyi and her husband and talking about how much time had passed since their last meeting. Su took out a small box and handed it to the girl, saying that it was a gift from him and his wife. Kai thought it was very kind of them. She took the box in her hands, but did not even have time to look at its contents, because her boyfriend immediately snatched the gift, deciding to look at it. Yao Hui, looking at the gift, told his girlfriend that her sister and brother-in-law seemed hypocritical. Did they really send this garbage as a gift to Tianyi, and hurried to explain they accidentally found out that sister had just returned. The gift they had prepared was not enough. Kai just smiled. It was enough for her that at least Tianyi and her husband were very sincere. Hui also said that not having this shoddy sincerity is just fine. Suzy informed the couple that their gift is not garbage, but real jade. The guy asked his wife to trust him, and she thought that he should stay in the shadows. She was worried about him. Hui asked what benefits the destroyed garbage of the Su family could give. He said that he just didn't want him to put himself in an awkward position. Also, according to him, yesterday the elderly lady had a birthday. Today he prepared a special gift, which turned out to be a piece of exquisite jade. Grandma, she didn't mind looking at such a gift. The man took out a real cotton jade. The elder began to say with a smile that Yao Hui was a very generous guy who became a director at a fairly early age. She doesn't need to worry about Kai while she is in the care of such a person. Hugh said that his grandmother was just flattering him. The grandson told his grandmother that there was nothing in common between them. Huey's gift, cotton jade, is perfect. According to him, it is worth looking at the jade donated by some people. It is even less than garbage. Kai was clutching the jade given to her in her hand, which was now being discussed. Suzy suddenly asked the young man if he had already strained. This behavior caused an immediate reaction from those who were present, including Kai and her companion. The god of war said that birds and sang come together. Hui and Yuntian Zio have been together for a long time, probably infect each other. Zio asked what he meant by saying that. The dragon marshal calmly and with a smile on his face stated that what he had in mind was quite simple. This cotton jade, just given to grandma, was an ordinary fake. Zio grabbed Su's tie in anger, calling him a scumbag. In his opinion, he did all this on purpose to arrange a fight here. How dare he even claim that the gifts from Yao Hui and Tianyu were not real? Does he have proof of that? The guy did not put up with such rudeness towards himself. Because he hit the arrogant kid in the face, he flew away. A trace of someone else's hand remained on his face. With a stern and serious face, Z said that he did not take any pleasure in lying to people like him. A voice told them to stop, so they both turned in the direction from which the sound came. It was the elder. She told Su to bring proof that the gift was a fake, since he so boldly continues to insist on his own. The granddaughter, who was standing behind Shiran, agreed with her grandmother's words, because the fact that the guy was lucky for the first time does not make him a professional in this business. The god of war smiled, saying that it was really very easy to prove that the gift was just a fake. He took the jade from the elder's hand and deliberately dropped it on the floor. The object immediately broke into fragments from contact with the floor. Those present began to be indignant because of this behavior. What this guy had just done, how could he so easily break someone else's gift? This jade, according to them, cost hundreds of thousands, and now it has turned into nothing. The dragon marshal only grinned when he heard the words about such sums. He asked about the price. Could this thing really be worth that much money? Z picked up the pieces and invited everyone to just take a closer look at the cross-section of the jade. This fake jade is made of patina, so at best it will only cost a few $100. People now found it funny that Yao Hui would have given a fake jade to his grandmother if not for this exposure. They began to mock him. Someone from the crowd said that you can know a person for a long time without understanding his true nature. The man with the fake now felt awkward. It seemed that he was ashamed because he had just been caught doing this, and there were so many people around. Then Shiran started shouting for everyone to immediately stop this whole farce, because despite the fact that this man is the commissioner of the motherland, there is no certainty that he could personally buy her a fake jade as a gift. The man, for whom my grandmother had just stood up, thanked her from the bottom of his heart for her understanding. After that, the elder turned to Suzy. At first she seemed calm, and then she complained that the atmosphere of this whole peaceful family meeting was completely destroyed only because of him and his inappropriate behavior. He was again made guilty of everything and asked to apologize to Kai's companion. The marshal was completely at a loss what he had done wrong again and why he needed to apologize for what had happened. The rest were pleased with this turn of events. It was a pleasure for them to watch how Z was being scolded, and the situation with the fake was immediately forgotten, which Huey himself was incredibly happy about. Tianyi immediately stood up to defend her husband. She said that actually he had done nothing wrong, so why did he need to apologize to someone? Even Sue was surprised that the girl behaved like that. She replied that she absolutely does not care who is right and who is to blame in this situation. All this is just for the harmony of the family. Is it so difficult to understand now? The girl did not find the right words to answer, and her husband took her hand and said that everything was fine. After he said that, since the family does not welcome them, it is better for them to leave at all. They had already turned around and were about to leave. She ran, just shouted after them. However, on the way to retreat, they met another person who was amazed by their confidence. This man did not think at all that he would meet Yang Chen again at the restaurant. He immediately approached the elder and said that, in any case, he had good news that he would like to share with everyone. The lady with a smile asked to do a favor and tell what he was going to. The appraiser said there was someone who offered $1 million to buy a sky-glazed rose by Min Jun in a purple-spotted bowl. Everyone whose ears heard Kang's words bulged their eyes in surprise. Tianyi turned towards her husband, and he was looking at her with a smile. Grandma was glad to hear this news, and the gentleman told her that she could contact him at any time if she wanted to sell it. She ran, convinced him that, of course, she would do so. Suddenly, the antiques appraiser noticed something. It was a gift from Kai Kai's sister. The man snatched the thing from her hands and stared at her in surprise. He started talking about this jade, even stammering a little. The girl from whom he took this item did not understand that she aroused such interest in Kang. One young man told Kang that it's nothing, but some broken trash is over there. The old man was advised not to waste his time, because even they would not waste it on this garbage. The appraiser closed his eyes for a moment. It seemed that tears immediately flowed from his eyes. After some time, he began to tearfully and enthusiastically say that he could not have imagined that he would be so lucky to find such treasures. Now he really had no regrets left. He held this jade in both hands as if nothing more valuable in this world existed, as if this object was his whole life. Zio thought again that Lord Kang might have just confused it with something else. How can something like this be mistaken for a treasure? The old man just waved it off, noticing only how stupid this child is. He explained that this precious jade was once worn by a royal princess, and outsiders would judge it based only on its mottled appearance, not knowing or even guessing about its real value. Kang dared to ask who this treasure belongs to. She ran, smiled silently and nervously, but could not answer anything. Kai Kai immediately said that this thing belonged to Suzy, and pointed her finger in his direction. The god of war stood next to his wife, almost close, and looked at the appraiser. Kang approached the guy, asking if he could sell this treasure to him. The appraiser was ready to pay him 500 million for this jade. The old man wanted the thing so much that he held its owner's hand so tenderly, as if begging him to make this deal with him. The announced amount, that is, 500 million, shocked many of their listeners. The dragon marshal shook his head, saying that he shouldn't be asked about such things. The lord looked questioningly at the interlocutor, as if not understanding what he meant now. Z explained that he had already given this jade to Miss Kai Kai earlier, because it was up to her to decide on the question of ownership. If she wanted to sell the jade, she could do it. If she wanted to keep it, then let her keep it. In any case, it's her business, but not his. The girl was shocked. She could not believe that someone had given her such a valuable thing for nothing, which now she would have to dispose of. Other representatives of the fair sex, who were standing around her, watched in silence, covering their mouths with their hands in surprise.